Hello out there in podcast land. This is Trophies on PSN Sunday podcast coming at you. It's KryptoniteDragon and Dante Zero. And today we're going to do things a little bit differently than we have in the past. For one, we're not worrying anything about any graphics today. We've turned all of our settings way down low because of all the problems we've had. Little technical challenges, as it were, from previous podcasts. And we're going to see how things go with our connection today with just Dante Zero and I. And everything's set to absolutely the lowest visual quality. And we've made a few other tweaks, and hopefully everything will work out well. And today's topic is going to be first-person shooters. But before we get into that, I'm going to talk about our recommended arcade game of the week. And you're not going to get a graphic this week, but that's going to be Asteroids. It's kind of an old favorite. And some of you that maybe are up there in years may remember that game from all the way back as far as the Atari.
Oh, I do.
And even the arcade console. And so it's certainly a classic. And I can say that I know I've played a gazillion games of it. And so we recommend you try that out in the arcade. A little bit of nostalgia this time around in the game of Asteroids. And Dante, I understand you have a PSN game of the week this week for us?
I do indeed. It is a bit predictable, but yeah, the PSN game of this week that I would highly recommend for everyone to check out is The Walking Dead, made by Telltale Games. It's actually done over 5 mini episodes, but the game itself is fantastic. It's great as a fan service, but it's also great for newcomers to the series of The Walking Dead. What makes it great though is that every choice, every decision that you make in the game ultimately affects the outcome, and to be honest with you, you'd probably have to play the game at least 50 to 100 times to get probably every possible outcome, which is crazy when you think about it for a digital PSN game. So yeah, that's my highlight of the week. I really think people should check it out. It's not too expensive either. It's around about $15.99 if you buy the season pass, or you can buy the episodes individually for about £4 each. So yeah, Walking Dead. Check it out this week.
So I assume each has trophies as before. Each has its own set of trophies. About how many trophies you get with each release?
Yeah, there's roughly around about 12 trophies each episode, and it's all cumulative as well. So you will get a platinum trophy for it as well. So
awesome.
when you buy the first episode, it automatically loads up the trophy list, and then as you buy each episode, it's automatically patched into the rest of the game and the trophies itself. So yeah, you'll get about between, I think, somewhere around about the 60 to 70 trophy mark. And a nice shiny platinum for that.
Oh yeah, you can't complain about that. So do you watch the show as well, or?
Yeah, no, I'm a huge fan of the show. I'm a little bit behind at the moment with season 3, but yeah, just Andrew Lincoln in it is fantastic, and the whole dynamic of it. I like the fact that as well that it's more about the human apocalypse thing, and it's, the focus isn't so much on the zombies.
Yeah, it's not just a killing spree. It's not just, it's that struggle, exactly like you're saying, where you're thinking about, wow, if they were to have a baby during the apocalypse, for just an example. I mean, that's some cool TV. I really enjoy that show. Now, I haven't played the game. Without any spoilers, are they similar? Do they have the same characters? Is it completely different?
Well, it's based around 2 main characters separate from the show. So you have a guy called Lee, this guy that's been convicted for a crime, and you actually see part of the chaos when the actual outbreak goes down. At the start of the episode 1, and you come across a small girl called Clementine, and it's basically takes you on the journey through with those 2 characters and the partnership between them and the bonds they forge, and there will be obviously numerous different members to your group, and that's where the decision dynamic comes in, because certain decisions you make depends on what group of people you finish with in the end. So yeah, and I think there's also some cameos from some of the characters in the series as well. So you will spot them when you play through it. The interesting thing is as well with this KD is that when you actually finish each episode, it
Uh-huh.
gives you a breakdown of certain key decisions that you made within the game, and it gives you like a percentage that tells you how many what other players chose to do instead. So you can actually compare it asynchronously with other players. So, for example, if you choose as I say, without trying to give too many spoilers, if you choose to fire a gun, for example, as a key decision, someone else might have chosen not to, and it gives you a breakdown of the percentage of how many players have, what percentage of players have chosen to fire the gun and what haven't.
Oh, okay.
So you can see what the alternative options are and what everybody else is doing after you played the game, and it's kind of an interesting sort of dynamic. With it's not it's just interesting to know what other people have done with the playthrough, and I do. Do you know what? I really wish they put some stuff like that in RPGs, man, because that is a proper cool feature of the game.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Sounds like something I might want to check out. So I saw something too, like I'm watching the TV series, and you can actually enter online, and it looks like they have a contest for you to actually become a character in the game. Were you aware of that?
I wasn't. To be honest with you, I'm not sure which game that would be though, because Telltale, who have made the downloadable episodes, have actually confirmed that they are going to be making a season 2. However, Activision also acquired a license to produce a game, and I think that's the one the
Uh-huh.
competition may be based on. Now, Activision's game is more of a first-person shooter. Surprise, surprise. Um, hot topic
Call
of
of
today,
Duty,
but
Zombies,
yeah,
Walking Dead.
yeah, but it's based around what's his name? You know the guy with the crossbow,
Daryl.
Daryl. That's the one. The game is solely based around him when the outbreak affected before he joined the group in the series.
Awesome.
So yeah, I've got a funny feeling that competition's probably related to that particular game more than Telltale, because Telltale, in some respects, aren't a big publisher or a big developer, but they're sort of indie, but they're not. They're sort of in between big publisher, developer, and indie. They're sort of in that middle ground.
Yeah, yeah, gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, Daryl's one of my favorite characters outside of Rick, obviously, but Rick's losing it lately. If anyone's watching season 3,
Yeah, well,
but
I'm up to about episode 3, so just be warned.
yeah, no
Be careful
spoilers,
with
but
spoilers. Yeah.
we don't like the spoilers. But no, yeah, it's a great series. It's one of my must-watch shows. I've got very few that fall into that, and I don't even really. It almost doesn't seem like it's about zombies, even though zombies are a big part of it. It's just
Yeah.
you get some
Yeah.
zombie killing action every episode, but at the same time, it's like that human drama and
Yeah.
the breaking down, and they killing off. I'm not going to give any spoilers again, but killing off major characters. It's refreshing to have a show do that, because you don't know if your favorite character is even safe. You know,
Yeah. No,
and there's a comic
the
that's
last
out,
TV show.
and it's nothing like the comic.
Yeah. The last TV show I remember that got away with that, where they could just kill off main characters, was Heroes, and it's got a lot of the similar sort of elements to it.
Uh-huh.
Obviously one was about superpowers and people coping with them, but the powers were never the main attraction with it. It was always about the human drama, and that's why I find myself very much drawn into The Walking Dead. I'm just hoping that when the next game comes, courtesy of Activision, I really hope they just don't kill it, and I really hope that ABC stick with it as well. If there's a couple of episodes that don't do well in the ratings, I just hope they don't go, right, cancel it. Do you know what I mean? Because that would just be such a terrible, terrible shame, because it is a great franchise across the boards.
Yeah. It doesn't
I
seem to be
want,
going anywhere. It's got a huge following.
yeah. Well, I hopefully want to pick up the compendiums, which have all the comic books as well. But I believe there's a collector's edition coming out with the Walking Dead Telltale game, where you can buy that on retail disc for about $20, and then for like $60 you can get like a few cool extras and the compendium books as well. So it should be interesting. But I do recommend that to everybody, even if you're not a fan of zombies. It is definitely worth a game just picking up. Even if you like your point-and-click adventures, pick it up. If you like your RPGs and adventure games, pick it up. If you like your Call of Duties, pick it up, because you will get enjoyment out of this.
Yeah. Now, is this one you think? I mean, also it'd be good to wait for the disc version with all of them on it, and
it makes no difference. It really is just a case of what works for you.
Yeah.
Because essentially they are the same product. So whether you buy it on disc or you buy it download, you're not going to get anything different.
You know what I really like? This doesn't have anything with the story. It's not linked. I like the idea of that too. You won't get any spoilers from either one or the other about what's going to happen in it.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of why I'm hoping that Telltale. I was kind of relieved when after Episode 5 launched, that Telltale did tweet that they would be doing a second season, and I'm glad they've stuck that out, even though Activision are doing theirs, because I do think, given Activision's big
they'll kill it.
big marketing clout, there's a good chance that if it's really bad, they could do some serious damage to it. So I know when Heroes was on TV, for example, the guys behind that, Tim Kring, he discussed the possibility of a game, but in the end nobody could come to an agreement with the publisher because they couldn't guarantee that it wouldn't destroy the reputation of the show. Yeah. It's just a shame that after 4 seasons they cancelled it, so they cancelled it anyway, so it wouldn't have made any difference. But yes, Walking Dead, which brings us on to obviously our subject of this week, which is obviously first-person shooters.
Yep. Speaking of zombies.
Yeah.
Call of Duty.
Speaking of zombies, Call of Duty. Yeah. We did that poll actually on the site after last show, and the general feeling was the question we asked was basically, do first-person shooters ruin the industry? And the feeling was that in some areas it does, in others it doesn't. It was a sort of bit of an indecisive one, which is actually an interesting result if you think about it, because on the one hand you've got the success that Call of Duty has. I think we published a news article where it made something like $500 million in one day. And when you look at the success of that, and then you talk to the average Joe, the varying opinions are completely different, because obviously on Activision sides they've got statistics, they've got facts to back up them warranting a new game every year. On the other hand, you've got the fans that are saying, well, it's rubbish, it's the same thing every year, it's the same graphics engine, so many there's like this amongst fans, there's this internal debate with it, yet at the same time on Activision side they can say, well, you're the guys buying it, if nobody bought it, then we'd have to increase the quality of the product to make it sellable. So it was interesting to see the results of the poll. To be honest with you, I'm with the majority of people. I think, Call of Duty aside, I think first-person shooters do quite a bit of damage to the industry, but at the same time there are obviously a lot of positives. I think me and you spoke before about how some first-person shooters, in order to be different from the main competitors, it requires them to innovate, and so even though that innovation may not work in that game and that game may flop, you may see that innovation then carry over into other genres, and people pick it up for their other games like RPGs and so on like that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of areas that you have to like really look at it, because even right down to the gaming night, first person shooters dominate our gaming night selections, and it's hard to come up with some of those other games that are still very popular that people like to play, even to the point of getting other genres in where you always end up with games that involve shooting. And that's not a large percentage of games out there, yet it does dominate the landscape. And I think there's two types of gamers really, and maybe we should have related the question to trophy
Yeah,
hunters in specifics. Does it ruin trophy hunting? But I think you've got a lot of people that play a lot of different games that are the staple point gamer, and then you've got people that just buy a first-person shooter, unwrap it, stick it in there, and play multiplayer and nothing else. These guys don't go for trophies, and I've got a lot of people on my friends list that do that. They don't care about RPGs. They don't want to try any other game. It's just first person shooter, get on, play multiplayer, and that's it. And
yeah,
that speaks to how many first person shooters have the shortened story. You can beat the single player story in a couple of hours, and there's no replay value. There's no playing with someone else. There's a lot of that you see in the first-person shooter genre, and then, like you said, that invades into other genres where they try to duplicate that because there's a success with one element or another in that first-person shooter that they want to get for their RPG now. And so I don't know. I think there's a lot of ways it affects the industry that we don't realize at first until you look at it and apply it in each of these different areas.
yeah,
Trophies is a good example where it hurts me because I like playing first-person shooters, but at the same time I don't like playing a zombie game. And then I've got something where they've decided that zombies are key, and now it's built into every Call of Duty. And just starting off right from the get-go to get my platinum in Black Ops, I'll have to beat, I think it's like 7 zombie trophies. And
Oh, you don't want to talk to me about zombie trophies on Black Ops 2, because I kid you not, there was one particular tricky one. Just a word of warning for anybody that does go for it. It's called the Tower of Babel. You have to do it in transit, and I have been trying since the day after Black Ops 2 launched to get that, and I only just got that on Friday, and that's after putting in about 40-50 hours of trying to find the right way to do it.
so you got to do it while
Uh,
you're riding on a bus or something along those lines?
it's extremely complicated to do it, because essentially there are two different ways to do it. This particular achievement, and neither way is relying on 100% skill. A majority of it is
Luck.
luck.
Yeah.
So
And we all love those luck trophies where you got to play 50,000 times just to get that flip of the coin going for in your direction.
exactly. So just be warned if you go for that. I think my buddy GTA Man was saying earlier. I think that's probably why only about 12 people, according to your gamer cards, about 12 people in the world have Platinum and Black Ops, and that's it. It's crazy when you think about it. But I was just going to come back to this point you mentioned that about people that do quite often just purchase first-person shooters and don't play anything else. And I've got to be honest with you, right? I will say this is my personal opinion, though. They frustrate the hell out of me, because if you think about it, right, in the grand scheme of things, a PlayStation or an Xbox isn't particularly cheap.
No, it isn't.
You play one game and you spend thousands of hours on it, and those people are the kind of people the industry doesn't need, in the nicest possible way, because if all those people are spending thousands of hours in there, there's too easy for developers to try and replicate the success. And so a lot of the time, a lot of these gamers that are spending thousands of hours in, which, at the end of the day is their personal prerogative, they miss out on so much that gaming has to offer. Quite often, I mean, I've seen it myself over the last couple of years, certainly since trophies were implemented, which is, I'll say to one of my friends who are like that will just spend all their time on, let's not be about the bush, who will spend all their time on COD, and I'll say to him, look, you've really got to try this game. It's amazing. And one friend that I spoke to about it, I suggested, he really should play Heavy Rain, for that kind of different type of game, and he absolutely fell in love with it. And as a result, it's changed his gaming, the way he games, because now it's not just all about that online constant multiplayer immersion. He now knows there's other games out there. And so can you see why it frustrates me? Because I'm like, there's thousands of games from different genres that will have something that will appeal to someone somewhere. But the problem is, if they're suckered into essentially life-sucking multiplayer through Call of Duty, you have to wonder why developers do keep making games, because the danger that we're in at the moment, in terms of the industry, is that there is a good chance that at some point, like most of the developers will say, right, Activision, go make your own console with your custom COD on that custom console and do it that way. And so people like Sony and Microsoft will be phased out in favour of a console that just plays that one game and gives people the fix they crave.
I never really thought about that. I don't know. Yeah, but I mean, looking at it, like I can tell you just from like stat-wise, like for one, I've had a clan since Call of Duty 4, the first Modern Warfare came out, and I can remember having at one point hundreds of people in that clan, and it's just like today I think we've got like 60 some people or something in my clan, and to get any of those people to play a different game than Call of Duty is just like, I mean, it's ridiculous how some of them are so turned off that I get people asking me, how do I sign up for the clan? And you can tell they're not even using a computer. They're not even really computer literate to get on there, figure out the Black Ops website and sign up for the clan. And that shows you they have no interest in trying other things, trying other games. It's all about that first-person shooter, and that's a large majority of people. And it'd be shocking if we could get some stat information. I bet we'd be very, very surprised of how many people that play Call of Duty actually play other games. And you know how it is. These people get the first-person shooter, and they'll play that until the next one comes out. And that's a large portion, a large chunk of money for Activision. And it lends to these other developers. How can they get into that huge chunk of money? And what about some of these other games that come out that are innovative? And how do you get those people to ever try that so that they break their stride of first-person shooters only? I don't know, but there's definitely a first-person shooter type player that's a gamer, and then all the others of us that try all different things and go for trophies.
Well, I mean, I'll give you an example, like, because I mean, I've pretty much played every COD going, and numerous first-person shooters. Guerrilla are one of my favourite developers with the Killzone series, similar to Azuka, although I'm not as fanatical about Killzone as perhaps she is. But I tried that Wonderbook, the recent Sony thing recently, and it was just such a pleasant surprise, something completely different with a whole lot of potential behind it. And sort of after sort of being in, completing and enjoying the whole thing, I sort of thought to myself, how many people could see the potential of this if they just switched off COD? If someone went round and gave them all like thousands of people a free copy and just went, look, sit them down in front of this, desensitise them from the shooter aspect, how many people would actually see the potential? Okay, it's initially based around Harry Potter, but the idea of a virtually interactive book that you play through your games console, for me, just blows my mind. I think there's another one coming as well. There's one called Walking with Dinosaurs. You'll be able to read a book based on dinosaurs and interact with them virtually. And yet, Call of Duty will always get the marketing and it'll get the press, and in the meantime, poor old Wonderbook will probably sell a couple of million, and then nothing will happen. Do you know what I mean? It'll just be like, oh, people will be dismissive of it. But I don't know. It's always tricky, and I think you know, with first-person shooters, I mean, we've talked a lot about COD, but I can see the same problems appearing in other areas, and I can see new problems emerging as well. For one thing, I do find first-person shooters are responsible single-handedly for making gaming communities a lot more hostile towards one another. I mean, you just have to look at the whole debate between which is better, COD or Battlefield, and that could set so many forums on fire within minutes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it doesn't just stop there. You know, you get on the headset. You know, you might have a Call of Duty player that's decided to take the plunge for Battlefield. They'll come on. They won't necessarily like it. They'll make it well known over the microphone that they don't like it, and people will set upon them. I don't think that's particularly great for gaming either, which is why I come back to this point that I make. The industry doesn't necessarily need these people to be involved in gaming, because I don't know about you, Katie. When I got into gaming as a kid, I loved the experience, the wonderment of something new with every different type of releases that came. And it just seems that the industry's lost that kind of magic these days. Or it's not projecting that magic anymore, because it's more in favour about chasing the dollar, and if it means having to get people addicted. And I say addicted is probably a strong word of putting it, but it's the only way I can describe the way that some people get fanatical over this particular genre.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, there's quite a few things in there. Like Call of Duty is obviously, we talk about competitive guns and stuff like that are paramount in most games. And you talk about, like, when I was a kid, if I look back, it was strikingly different than it is now. You didn't even have game saves back then, and guns, you know, weren't even really present. It was all, you know, variety of different kinds of gameplay. It was more creative, and you were more exposed to it because, you know, when I first had a game console, it was very easy to get into a game and realize that it wasn't all about it wasn't a genre even. You know what I'm saying? There wasn't a distinction between things. It was more like, you know, that's a fun new way to play. And as we go forward and we narrow our focus, where you got people that are just dedicated to just first-person shooters, you lose that automatically, and you lose the industry as a whole looking at that, when it makes so much money, looking at that as, you know, any chance to try something creative. And if anything, it probably hurts any game developers and everything like that more, because these people aren't even being exposed to even the option of trying them. And the other thing too is as you make more and more successful series like that, you know, if a couple more came out where you had another version of Call of Duty, you know, maybe from another company, and you had another version of Battlefield, so where you had 4 or 5 really strong Call of Duty-like first-person shooters dominating the market, you'd probably see it pull a larger portion of gamers away from trying other things, because there constantly would be new versions coming out, and they'd be spending their months playing that, as opposed to, you know, what you do with the typical game. You get, I think, more out of it, but you finish them quicker, if that makes sense. Like, you know, there's more replay value in a Skyrim than a Call of Duty, and while it's not online, you're spending more time with that one game, but at the same time you're moving on quicker because you're not involved in that multiplayer element that's going on, you know, ceaselessly until the next version comes out. And at some point, if you take a large portion of the gaming community out of trying those other kinds of things and playing nothing but first-person shooters, then you might have a problem. So,
Well, see, that's where I think we're at this moment in time, and the recent sales only stem to prove it. I mean, even EA's Medal of Honor hasn't sold fantastically well, but you can guarantee there will be another Medal of Honor, as well as another Battlefield. And so I do wonder. Here, just a thought that sort of popped into my head, and I had thought about this before, and I want to put this to you and see what you think. Do you think, in that respect, that maybe violence has something to play within
with
the actual
the
genre,
attitudes and the yeah,
the
we
genre
talked about
itself?
this.
Because
We talked about this before, and I'm not a fan of believing that video games change a person's mentality. But I will say that, like, for me, I'm not a big fan of Black Ops 2. I'm gonna say that right now. It's got so many problems that affect me directly, I guess. Maybe I'm the only person in the world that has problems with connections and lag and things like that. But I can say, like, when I'm playing it, as opposed to I'm playing something else, because it's that online and because it's that competitive and because I'm a competitive person, like, being a trophy hunter, wanting to win, when I play that and I have those and I experience those problems, it does make me a little bit more. It's not a relaxing type of game play in most situations. It can actually become aggravating, and I can see where people get, where they're cussing and they're mad and they're screaming foul. And then the other thing is when there's a lot of popularity, I think that draws to you get that huge advertising word of mouth thing going. And what does that do? That attracts every kid, because if they have an Xbox or a PlayStation, and your friends are at school saying, I just got, here's an example from real life. My son's friends all decided to go buy the Chinese version of Black Ops 2 so they could get it a day early, so they could go to school and go, I'm playing Black Ops 2 already. So you got all these kids that are in school, I played Black Ops 2 today. It doesn't come out until tomorrow. And it attracts a lot of that younger audience, I think. And so you get more immaturity on the mic. You get more, particularly in Call of Duty. And I think Taz is right in this. You can't say that Call of Duty doesn't have the younger audience compared to a Battlefield. I think that's absolutely true. But I think it's part of that, and those are the people that are playing it.
Well, I mean, the reason I bring violence up within the game, and whether it's actually a draw towards the game, because essentially you can go shoot as many people as you want without any fear of consequences, and I wonder if that does have a part to play in its success, because if you actually look at the franchise, it's in terms of competing with Call of Duty, the only other first-person shooter that really competes with it is obviously on another platform, Halo 4. Obviously, as a first-person shooter, it's particularly both games, both franchises, particularly violent. But then, when you sort of then weigh up the games that could potentially compete with Call of Duty, you've got Assassin's Creed, which is an adventure game. Obviously, a majority of that is violent. Grand Theft Auto is
violence.
And so I wonder if the violence aspect of it, the being able to do violent actions without fear of a consequence, is part of the draw. Because, as I say, if you take into account, so like DJ Hero, for example, that's a music-based game. Would it draw the same kind of audience because it doesn't have violence? Well, it's not. It's not drawing the same kind of audience. It's not getting the same sort of sales as these other big popular franchises. So something in these big franchises has got to be drawing people in to get the interest, besides just the story and the gameplay and the graphics.
If you think about it, it goes back to, like, how do you lose or fail the most part from video games all the way through history? It's you die. You lose a life. And that's been a staple point. So it's almost become like, kill or be killed as the success marker, and so that's kind of proliferated all through every game, and it's very hard to break that mold where, if you talk about games that could be innovative like a flower or something like that, and people say, okay, what's the objective? Well, it's to spread seeds and bloom everything, and people are going, so you don't die, you don't,
Yeah.
it, so I think it's a take on, the modern day gamer looks at that as most of their games involve life or death. I don't know that, I don't espouse to the thing that people are enjoying killing and
Yeah, no, I'm
nice.
not. Don't get me wrong. I'm not. I'm not saying that video games as a whole just like breed violence. No, we've had that debate before, and I think we've agreed on saying, that you can blame in those situations. You can blame anything, but you can be pretty sure that video games don't necessarily contribute as a whole to more killings and more crime or anything like that. But what I'm
Yeah.
saying is that essentially, if you ignore that issue for a minute, the violent side of it has to be drawing people in with the fear, the being able to do things they wouldn't be allowed to go outside and do, you know. As I say, I do wonder if that draws a lot of is where a lot of that audience comes from, because having played numerous first-person shooters, I've got to admit, there is a joy from being able to get, kill streaks and kill hundreds of people.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
there was a line in Uncharted that sort of, Uncharted 2, that sort of slips a lot of people by, which is where he sort of, in the boss fight, he sort of questions, Nathan Drake's mentality in the fact that, hey, you've just killed like hundreds and hundreds of mercenaries and you don't even feel bad.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like people are going on Call of Duty killing hundreds and hundreds of people without ever asking the question, should I feel bad about that?
Hmm.
Do you see what I mean? I quite like, and see, this is what frustrates me about Activision chasing the big buck, and it's not just Activision, it's EA, even Sony do it, with the Killzone series as well, and they're all, and Microsoft with Halo, is that they all kind of have this great opportunity to put a moral ethics in there, this idea of questioning, which, to a certain degree would push not only the genre but the games industry forward, as we saw with Heavy Rain. Asking gamers difficult questions while they're playing, even if it is just shooting
Well,
thousands of
you're certainly talking about
bad
an
guys.
opportunity to, to put in and improve the storyline and as an added element, but really when we're talking about most first-person shooters, the storyline is, like I said, it's almost non-existent anyway. Most of them, like, are, if you truly look at them, they're absurd on a grand scale. Even your first-person shooters that have decent storyline, you know,
Well, I was
there's no realism there. There's not anything even close.
I was going to
And
say it's a shame we weren't able to get Taz this week, because obviously myself and you haven't had a chance to play Medal of Honor
yeah,
Warfighter, and EA sort of made an emphasis about the realism of driving home a compelling story with a single player campaign, and I'm kind of I'm intrigued by that.
well, you heard what happened in
Even
the news, right?
Yeah, even with all the controversy around it, and the soldiers, essentially being slapped on the wrist, or told off for making money, doing essentially their job. They were making money, I guess you could call it, on the side.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Personally, I like the story campaigns in first-person shooters. I think the only first-person shooter where the stories felt actually irrelevant is probably Time Splitters back in the day. The story didn't matter, but then that was a fun game. So, but I don't know. I mean, like Black Ops 2, the story player campaign is actually pretty good. There are elements of choice in there, as to which route you go, and I think Treyarch have done a pretty good job with it. However, it still comes back to no matter how good that story is, it just still feels like a cookie cutter. You could take that storyline and put any sort of brand on it, and hey presto, you got a first person shooter. And I do wonder, as I say, that with them chasing the buck, and sometimes the majority of the game's focus is getting the multiplayer audience and selling the extra products like DLC and custom skins, etc., that they sort of lost their way a bit in what they were. Because back in the day, first person shooters, bar sort of Doom, Quake and Unreal, had some sort of compelling storyline. Red Faction, SOCOM, yep. SOCOM was third person, but yeah.
Well, shooter nonetheless.
Yeah. But they did have pretty compelling stories, and in the case of Red Faction, it was pretty sad to see THQ not only cancel the series, but when they did do the new games, they didn't revert back to what they were great at. Instead, they chose to go down a third-person route, which turned a lot of people off the game and resulted in it being canned. But I don't know. I really would like them to see, developers of first-person shooters take on the ethos that David Cage has when it comes to games design. Is that and not just David Cage, but someone like Hideo Kojima. It's like, if you're going to stick someone in a war arena, you have to simulate it, and it can't just be simulating the simple things like firing a gun or calling streaks or whatever. You have to try and replicate the emotion of battle, because when soldiers in real life go out to shoot, they don't think, oh yeah, great, I'm going to be able to use my UAV drone once I've killed 3 Iraqis or whatever. It just doesn't work like that, and it's disappointing to see such a genre with great potential not fulfill it in favour of the quick buck. And as I say, we come back to this point where the millions of people that play it just for the solely multiplayer side of things with the stats, and I'm sure people will probably listen back to this podcast and question my thing with addiction, but it's getting silly to the point of where people are literally becoming addicted to it in the same way that in Korea people are addicted to StarCraft. Just with this, it's on a more global scale than perhaps that sort of game. But yeah. I don't know. I just
What's the answer? I mean, is it speaking of realism? Do you think that the game makers have some duty to get that more? I'm not talking about being invested more in a character. Clearly, that would help. When you talk about The Walking Dead as the show, and you relate that to video games, being invested in a character and having a backstory, and maybe even being able to develop them, similar to maybe what Mass Effect did, where your decisions affect your character in some way. But is there some duty for these games to hit upon realism, to strike that point home, or do you think more that they have free reign because all these fantasy games, magic and stuff's not real, and whether you're playing, a Harry Potter game where you're casting spells or you're doing that, it's still all fantasy. By what you're saying, it's almost like your love for the story makes you almost seem to say that they have some responsibility to make the games, more quote unquote realistic.
But when
so that they're not so just bloodthirsty, all about kill streaks.
Well, see, that's what I was going to say. When the fantasy of the game itself becomes a case of where it is that thirst for blood, that getting the kill streaks, and I don't know, that worries me slightly. That doesn't set a great precedent. But I don't know, because it's one of those intriguing problems. You know, the industry is thriving as a result of it in certain areas in terms of it selling more units. You know, more and more people are getting into games as a result of it through things like you mentioned before, word of mouth. But the quality of those games aren't as great as they could be, and you know, so and there's a lot of areas that it really needs to develop, but at the same time, you know, we're seeing publishers and developers going down left, right and centre because they just can't compete from the sales aspect. So while, you know, it does a great job of bringing the industry into the public eye, more so perhaps than it has ever done in the past, you know, it's great having the public eye, but if we haven't got those historical developers and publishers that we've grown up for years with still with us and still being able to create different types of games, we're very much in danger of going there. But I think at the end of the day, you know, the responsibility of how it changes going forward falls into two categories really, which is, you know, developers and publishers really need to stop chasing the buck. I mean, I know they're a business; they're in business to make money.
That's not going to happen. That is just not going to happen.
They need to look at the quality of product that you know they're selling. I mean, I just spoke to you before we came on the podcast that Call of Duty game, Call of Duty Black Ops Declassified on a PS Vita is an absolute horrible game.
Yeah, crap.
And you know, essentially, I want it for free, but I hadn't won it for free because it's such a terrible product, and it annoys me that they can put that out and get away with it. And I think you know, going forward to solve the problems, they do need to look at the quality of the product, with some moral concerns around that, in the fact that yes, they should want to make money, they should want to sell product, but they want to sell it of a high quality, and also they need to essentially start looking at the potential to get gamers actually hooked on it, which is never good essentially for the gamers. But the other category that would fall into the solution of the problem is the gamers themselves. You know, if you want to go and buy Call of Duty every year or an EA first-person shooter game every year, by all means do so, but don't keep a closed mind in that respect. You know, gamers need to take it upon themselves to be able to go out and explore what other games are available.
There's no way that you're not going to have a company go against the money. But what you're saying, you know, that begs the question. I think there's room for someone to come along, and if they could actually develop, not worrying about genres. You know, take Call of Duty. It's a first-person shooter. They make first-person shooters. They're always going to seem the same, even if they make changes to kill streaks and all that other stuff. They can change the game engine around. It's still always going to come down to you running around with a rifle killing people. Now, you can change that up, and you can make it space agey, and you can go back in time and use more simpler weapons, all that other stuff. But ultimately, what you're talking about there is if you could have somebody have the foresight to develop it with, it doesn't have to be a first-person shooter. Only make it. You bring in that element of characters to where people are invested in characters, and that's going to make people care about their character more. And you develop the storyline where a person actually changes their character's mentality by the choices they make. And you know, bring in those elements where you're, you know, like we're talking about The Walking Dead, we're talking about a zombie movie, and we're not concerned about the zombies. The zombies aren't the main character. Just because it's a zombie film, you know, you're invested in the characters. And if you could do that with a game and make it along the lines of an RPG shooter and bring that in, you could have something that would appeal to a much broader spectrum of people than just first-person shooter fans. Yeah. You would have RPG fans, and you would have a new mix of people that are RPG first-person shooter fans. And I think if somebody was to take a bold step like that, you'd probably succeed. But you're not going to get anybody to fight the money element. That's never going to happen. They continue to make $500 million on day one. They're going to keep turning out the same stuff no matter what.
But here's the thing, there are games out there that already do that. the problem is it's not done on the biggest stage.
Yeah, but there's a lot to be said
Walking
about
Dead, for example, can
having
only
the
do
money and
so much
resources
The
before
Walking
you
Dead
take
can
that
only
step.
do so much as a downloadable title. But having said that, if Activision took it upon themselves and went, well, we could potentially do that with a first-person shooter, given the following behind the first-person shooter genre as it is now, think of the people that it would reach. I mean, just sort of like for comical effect here, I mean, how many people would actually play Call of Duty where it rewards you for not killing? I'd like to see Activision experiment with things like that, and I'd like to see EA do it as well.
Yeah, but it's
I don't know.
still...
It really is a tough thing because even after the remains of even after the podcast itself, I can imagine we'll get people say which one of us is right, which one of us is wrong. You'll have the Battlefield 3 and Modern Warfare debates going on and stuff like that. But as you say, there's no definitive solution. Personally, I would like to see Quantic Dreams have a stab at a first-person shooter. I think what they're doing in terms of games like Heavy Rain and the upcoming Beyond Two Souls, if anyone's going to pull it off, they could.
Well, you know what you do? Let's do that as our next poll question. Then let's develop it as what kind of first person? Where would you like to see first person shooters go? If a person would like to keep them the same as the Call of Duty style, or if they'd like to see more real, quote unquote, realism, where you're not calling in just three, after 3 kills calling in a UAV or whatever, but maybe more, gritty battlefield stuff, or something along the lines of a developed character that's making decisions along with the shooting. Maybe lay something like that as a poll question, and I would bet that a majority of people would love to see fully developed characters, because even in even in kids playing Call of Duty, you can see people know who Ghost is from the Modern Warfare series, and the only thing that I can say is that you have a lot of standout games where people know a character and they relate to that character in a game, and that becomes a staple point for them going forward, that they compare stuff to that, even to the point of making their PSN names after them, things like that stand out. And if you had that in all your games, that's just going to make them that much better. If you had that element that you're invested, because that's truly where addiction comes from, is not just something to burn the time.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned Ghost, actually, because the funny thing with that is that with the Modern Warfare series, you can identify Ghost as an icon, but the truth is, when you sort of look at him as a character, nobody really knows that much about him or his background or anything like that, which is weird how people then attach themselves to it.
Right.
See what I mean?
Yeah, if you had a Ghost that he came through boot camp, you took him through boot camp, you made decisions that affected his skills. Is he did you decide to go to be a sniper, and so he's got sniper skills, and you took that all the way through, let's say the single player, and you finished the single player by building a character and becoming invested in his storyline, and then you took that person into multiplayer, don't you think that would be a gazillion times better than you're just some unnamed soldier and you're picking the color absolutely. You're picking the color of his camouflage and ranking up a gun.
Absolutely.
That's my point. I think that we're missing a big part in first person shooters. We're missing a huge opportunity in the game industry for somebody to just take it upon themselves to build a serious good character and just keep them going forward to where you're growing with them. And I really liked what Mass Effect was trying to do, where you import the character from before that you played in previous series, and I think something like that is that's the genius way to go. That's the way games need to be made.
Yeah, and you're compelled to buy the sequels, etc., for the right reasons as well, not because you want to get online and shoot loads of people, but because you want to find out how that character
Yeah,
develops,
what's the
how
yeah? It's like
that
watching the next
story.
show. You
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
what's going to happen to so and so? The cliffhanger. And yeah, I really wish I'd see that. And I hear people talk about realism all the time, and with Medal of Honor and consulting special forces units that then later got in trouble for their help on the game. You're never going to find any of that realistic. And it's sad that people, I would like to see some things that are along the lines of more realism. But
But
at
it
the same time,
depends on how you mean by realism, because um,
well, let me
you know,
explain. Let me explain that.
yeah,
I've for some of you that don't know, I spent a number of years in law enforcement, and I've seen what gunshots can do. Um, and the whole idea of killing people and all that other stuff isn't glorified in my mind. So maybe I missed that end of it from what your perspective is of everyone just going out and getting the kills and all that other stuff. To me, it's just a I don't even think about it. I play the game to play the game. But at the same time, when you have a game where a person's a grenade goes off next to them and they get shot 5 times in the head and they're just and they recover a couple seconds later, and that's, to me, the realism factor there is it really affects my mentality on the game, because if something like that is happening to you, because it is a video game, you have no interest in caring about getting to cover or making a smarter choice that's more actually combat. It's
yeah.
more a smarter move in a combat sense. Instead, it's like, well, if I die, I'll respawn in 2 seconds. And I don't know the answer to that. Obviously, if we can't have it where if you're dead, then you're dead, and you got to start your single player version of the
Yeah.
game over again completely. I mean, something like that doesn't make sense.
Well, it's strange because we talk about all these things that we'd want to see and stuff, but a lot of the framework's already out there through numerous different developers and publishers, as I said before. I mean, what you described there about obviously characters dying and actually feeling bad because your characters died. A recent game that's tried to replicate that is Zombie U on the Wii, which is obviously a first-person survival horror zombie game.
Yeah.
And the concept of that is that when you die, you lose that character for good. You can't play that character again. You then have to take over a different survivor, and the guy that guides you through the game, the narrator, switches attention to your new character. And so if you've invested time in that particular character, like a couple of hours, you're obviously going to want to do everything you can to keep that alive. From the reviews I read, that in regards to Zombie, a lot of issues plagued Ubisoft with actually pulling that off. But again, the concept's there. In an industry where a lot of things are plagiarized in one form or another, I'd like to, again, it could be something that could be done.
Yeah. I just don't know that, like Price and Soap and the guys from Modern Warfare. We're a lot more interesting to me than the crazy Black Ops.
Yeah.
And I think that has a lot to do with my enjoyment of the single player, and then you switch to multiplayer and it's just totally has nothing to do with it. It's like it's almost like a separate game, and if you really look at it, it is. You look at Black Ops 2. I haven't played much. I haven't seen much of the single player campaign, but the single player, the multiplayer, and the zombies are 3 games put into one.
Yeah.
There's no vested interest in any of them really, because the single player, I know it's I haven't like I said, I haven't gotten into it, but from Black Ops, the single player story to me was,
So I wonder then if one potential solution would be to essentially bring some credibility back to the first person genre, as it is perhaps maybe then someone like Activision needs to look at, well, we've got enough in-house developers to do it now. Why don't we make a $60 single-player first-person shooter, and then, yes, we'll develop a multiplayer side-by-side with that, but then we'll do that and do that as a separate release, and then give gamers at least some sort of choice. The only problem with that is whether it'd be successful or not. I don't know, because obviously it requires someone to actually try it. I mean,
well, it would show us where people's interest lies, and I think the multiplayer would, I would venture to say that if you had Black Ops 2 and it had absolutely no single player, and you just had your zombies, your online multiplayer, your online zombies, and they just released that, I bet we wouldn't see much difference in sales from what you have right now.
But on the flip side, it'd be interesting to see if those that would buy the multiplayer would then buy the single player.
I don't think they would.
Branded.
I don't think.
Because it's like if you have a favorite brand, you have to have everything that brand has. Do you see what I'm saying? So like if you buy a Nike pair of shoes, the chances are you're more than likely to buy a Nike watch or a Nike pair of socks. But as I say, it's one of those things you can't really road test until you can't really speculate on until someone actually tries it. I have a funny feeling that you'd be surprised at the numbers that would buy perhaps the multiplayer and then go for the single player as well, and vice versa. I wouldn't be surprised at the amount of people that buy it for its single player, and then as a direct result of enjoying the single player, for example, they would then go and purchase the multiplayer version of it.
I don't think your multiplayer players would buy the single player. I think you'd see single player. The people that would buy that would probably buy the multiplayer too. But I don't think the multiplayer buyers would buy the single player. That's my feeling on it. So I guess in that aspect, I respectfully disagree, and I think that this goes back to my take on it, and first-person shooter multiplayer online players. I know way too many that are just not interested in anything else, and I have friends that my friend Nick's a perfect example. I've taken games over to his house and said, try something different besides Call of Duty, and left games over there, only to a couple months later, hey, did you try it? Yeah, I played it for 10 minutes. Not really my thing. See you online. We'll play some Call of Duty. And, I don't know what it is. I don't know that I have the answer or what's going to make it more interesting. I just know that I sure would like to see somebody develop a true storyline with the first-person shooter, make it interesting, keep it as a series, let you grow with the person as you develop them all the way through, and maybe on the subsequent series you allow the import of that character, and even to the point of multiplayer. There'd be nothing wrong with me playing as the character Mason in multiplayer, for example, and just make everyone else that's on the game look like your average Joes. It only has to be directed towards me to keep me interested in that I am that person. I'm developing that character further in multiplayer.
Yeah.
And maybe I develop them and I take them back to the single player, and I can do the single player again, maybe with more skills because I've played and built that character up in multiplayer.
Yeah, so you've got that connection, that bond with your character.
Exactly.
So even if it is, say for example, as you mentioned there with the Call of Duty and Mason side of things, if your single player campaign, developing that character has been different from everybody else,
right?
That's taken you on your own personal journey, which you then take into the multiplayer. How developers would address the multiplayer is, there's not enough hours in the day to actually have that discussion on a podcast, because there's so many different ways you could throw it out there, but there'd be no way we could put our finger on one and go, right, that would be the best way to implement it on multiplayer. But yeah, no, I get what you're saying, and I'm in agreement with that. I would like to see something like that happen.
Yeah. And make it more about, the development, not making it, the other thing that's really just unrealistic about it is the jack of all trades kind of thing that comes with, with first-person shooters. For one, ranking up weapons and stuff. If you're in the military, you're going to specialize. You're going to pick your skills. You're going to get, if you want a certain scope or something like that, you're going to have that available as it relates to your skills. You're not going to, you know, switch to a sniper and then go to, double pistols. It's kind of.
Do you know one game that sort of pulled that off a bit? I was actually talking to a buddy about this the other day, about mag, because that has essentially the makings of what we talk about in terms of what we're talking about in terms of a multiplayer aspect of it. It has the specialities that you would expect someone in the military to have, but I mean, also the fact that you have leadership roles, and what you do in terms of those leadership roles affects how the impact on the battlefield itself. There just isn't that character integration. There isn't that connection with your character.
Yeah.
It's more connection with your whole platoon more than anything than individual characters or any sort of real emotion on the battlefield. But it does, again, it still does have the makings of that. Unfortunately, obviously, Zipper closed down this year.
Yeah.
But it is an IP that Sony still holds. So whether or not, someone like Kojima says, "Hey, Sony, you're my buddy. I'd like to take your concept of mag and do my magic like I do with Metal Gear." So who knows?
Yeah. Well, series come and go, and I think Call of Duty's here for the long run. I just, it's unfortunate that they seem to push some of the other, titles out, and that they're stale. They're stale. They really are, from the standpoint of what most people are saying. They appear to, even if they change everything up. Like, one thing about Black Ops 2, all the menus and everything have changed. The kill streaks and stuff have changed, and really, there's a lot of things. For as much as they gave us with, the ability to select multiple perks, things like that, they took some things away too, and you're going to see people don't even notice that. No kill streaks per each class is a perfect example. You used to could pick the kill streaks and everything like that, and you could set them up by what gun you were using. Your kill streaks would change, and people don't realize that it's the same kind of stuff. It's just recycled, and it's presented in a different manner with, new guns. And at the heart of it, it really is still the same, So.
Well, I mean, obviously, as you say, they are going to keep pushing them out. But as far as I'm concerned, with the Vita version, I really hope they don't continue to push them out on that.
It just doesn't work, does it? It's not the same kind of controller and feel.
It's not even that. It's just a terribly designed game. I really wish Nihilistic would just stop making games and take a step back.
Well, the reason I ask is, do you think first-person shooters do they have a place on handheld consoles as much as they do on?
I actually think they do.
Okay.
I do think that there is definitely a compelling argument to and potential there. I think it's just unfortunate that the people that are actually making it only seems to be one company at the moment, and they're doing an absolute terrible job in the fact they're not even getting the basic try. And that's not particularly great, especially for someone like Sony, because with the Vita being what it is and it's struggling, even though it is a fantastic bit of kit, effectively getting a license like COD onto the system has backfired, and instead what you've ended up with is an embarrassing situation for Sony because the game is so terrible.
Yeah, you're talking about Black Ops Declassified.
That's
just
right,
to clear that up. Yeah.
But so yeah, I think it'll depend as to whether that potential is fulfilled. If more developers actually make first-person shooters for it, I think and this comes back to what we were saying about the console versions with a different dynamic. I think when you take into account that the Vita has AR capabilities, I'd be interested to see a first-person shooter on a portable handheld with some sort of AR integration that you could actually play out in the real world.
Okay. not sure I understand what you mean there. Explain a little bit more.
So, like with alternative reality, obviously that you hold the camera up, and essentially it creates an object.
So making let me see if I got this right. So making maybe your house as a battlefield by
Exactly. So
getting
what
a
you could do is obviously on your screen, so you'd be walking around with your Vita, or you've got your
interesting.
little dude, um, holding his assault rifle, whatever, from a person point of view, and instead of having dedicated levels, obviously you'd be able to see your scenery or whatever. So if you're walking down the street, you would see your street, and then if you registered on your mini map, at the bottom right hand corner of the screen, you would then, obviously that would send out like a radar, and it would detect if other people are about, and so you'd be looking for other people, and then you'd look at your screen and you'd see another soldier. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, sounds complicated.
I'm probably not doing. I'm probably not doing the greatest explanation of it, but I guess what I'm saying is there is potential for the handheld first-person shooter, and there's many different ways to take it. Can take it. AR's one, even just doing a basic first-person shooter.
Well, now we're getting back into the whole thing though of people. Are people going to give it a chance? Because how many people are going to buy a handheld just to play a first-person shooter? As opposed to, you probably find people do buy a console so they can play first-person shooters. There's a difference in controllers. There's a difference in, the multiplayer element. Being on the go is a little bit different than, sitting stationary somewhere on a big screen TV. For example, like just Black Ops, just take that as its own little thing. If you're playing on a small screen on Black Ops, and you're playing the same game and somebody else is playing on a big screen, they have a serious advantage. If you're playing on a handheld, I would think it's probably along the same lines, in terms of the screen size, the controls, the speed of which it is, since it's working off of Wi-Fi, the speed at which, the reaction and stuff happens. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of things there that could make a handheld almost seem, in terms of first-person shooters, almost seem just so not on the same level.
Yeah,
that it wouldn't attract people to want to play first-person shooters at all. If I bought a Vita, I would not buy any first. I probably wouldn't buy any first-person shooters for it. That's my personal feeling.
Well, Call of Duty's done a great job in the fact that even though it's a terrible game, it has got people buying the system, which is a good thing and a bad thing if you look at it, because obviously it is generating more Vita sales, which means there's more people to play with, but the game's so terrible that you feel like whoever's bought it for Call of Duty's been screwed over a bit. But I don't know, because what I was going to come back to your point is that in order to do a comparison, you need essentially a batch of first-person shooters to do that have cross-play functionality.
Well, like your Black Ops Declassified, what kind of effect is that going to have on the market where, it's terrible? By your admission, it's terrible. So people buying more Vitas, what are they telling their friends? What are they saying? They're saying, it's crap. Don't buy it. And probably that equates to don't buy Vitas in the future. So it might, overall, the effect might be a negative.
I don't know. I think most people are sensible enough to say, the game would be a pile of crap, but the handheld itself is great. And I think, if you're having a conversation and sort of promoting it via word of mouth, I think most Vita owners already have done a great job in promoting it via word of mouth, saying, there are some great things to do on that hardware, even if some of the games are a bit questionable, i.e. Call of Duty. But the other side of it, obviously, is there's still potential for the system. It's still early days. Coming back to your point, is that in order to do a proper comparison, whether or not there'd be advantage to having it on a small screen or a big screen, or how that would work, you'd need essentially more than one developer making first-person shooters to do that, but also do it with the cross-play functionality. I think the concerns about the control scheme are a non-issue really, because essentially the Vita is effectively a dual-shock pad with a screen. Anybody that's played a PlayStation would, that's picking up a PS Vita for the first time would get used to it within minutes,
Really?
as opposed to hours or days.
Now, is it that similar?
It is that similar.
I've got a PSP, and I can say it's, just the flatness of it, not having the yoke type sticks.
The sticks are pretty responsive and stuff. The only adjustment that you probably have to make, and to be honest, the way that you hold the Vita, it's not really an adjustment anyway, is that obviously there's no L2 or R2 buttons, which you can essentially map those to the top of the rear touchpad. And the same with L3 and R3, you can match that to the bottom segments of the rear touchpad as well. So there isn't really that much adjustment that you need to do. So essentially, when Sony sort of said about the Vita and the NGP, their focus was on getting great quality games and RPGs, but people do want first-person shooters on the go, and in order to do that, it's why PSP fans have been screaming out for a second stick for so many years, and Sony took that on board. Took on board the feedback from the developers and said now people have no excuse not to put first-person shooters on a handheld.
Makes you wonder why they didn't have a Vita version where they just took the controller and stretched it in the middle and put a screen on there. And
Well, in terms of what's happening with the Wii U and stuff, and using that as an additional controller, we've already seen some of the framework Sony doing that, not just via cross-play, but actually being able to control games, via Bluetoothing the via the PS3.
Working with PS3.
Yeah, so for example, they've done it with Little Big Planet 2. They did a massive patch for that, where you could solve puzzles throughout the level on your Vita, and what you could use your Vita like an X-ray thing. The upcoming Sly Cooper 4 has got similar sort of features available to it with the cross-play aspect of that as well. So, yeah, there is definitely potential for first-person shooters on the Vita and on portable, and it is a direction that I can see a lot of developers going. We just need them to do it so we can do a comparison.
Yeah, and I think that we're seeing first-person shooters obviously have a lot to do with everything. Have a lot to do with the future of games. I think there's a lot to be said about the pull that it has. Whatever, if good or bad, I think Call of Duty, at the very least, is around for a long time. And it would be nice if someone took the opportunity to make it into more than it is now, and develop some characters. And you're going to get to a point too where probably it'll be very hard for any other first-person shooters to even make it onto the scene, and that's unfortunate.
It would be for Guerrilla Games, I tell you that.
Yeah. So let's. You've played Black Ops, right?
Both versions, yeah.
Black Ops 2.
Yeah.
So let's finish up this podcast. Let's talk about our thoughts on just specifically Black Ops 2, and we'll call it a day, because we've talked a lot about first-person shooters. But let's get your opinion on Black Ops 2 specifically. Do you like it?
I do, actually. I have to admit, I've got frustrated with it, but that comes with obviously the nature of what the game is. But I think, when you sort of look at it as a value package game, the zombies is compelling, although that can be frustrating because lack of any real direction. I was slightly disappointed with the campaign concept they had for that. The single player campaign is probably one of the best Call of Duty single player campaigns I've played out of all of them, just because they have taken a different approach. They've applied a risk element to it by giving you a choice of which direction you want to take the campaign.
Oh, awesome.
And it does add to the replayability. There is actually a reason to now go back through and play that single-player campaign regardless of trophies. And I think the multiplayer is pretty good as well. Unfortunately, I've not been able to test out a lot of the esports features that we've talked about in previous podcasts.
Yeah.
Mainly due to the speed of my internet. But I think what's more frustrating about that is there's no guide to it. You've got to sort of fumble your way through it. But for the most part, the game modes that are on offer on multiplayer are more the same. There's a few extras that add a nice bit of difference. But yeah, overall, I can honestly say this is probably the first Call of Duty I've picked up in since COD 4 that actually has offered value for money in terms of what you get.
Yeah. I'm probably going to leave, the competitive stuff completely alone. Haven't played the single-player campaign. Seen a little bit of it. Haven't really dove into it. So I'm glad to hear that there's a little bit more to it. And with multiplayer, I would say that overall my experience has been pretty bad. I'm I'm a little bit down on it right now, just with connection issues and lag.
If you get that fixed, you will enjoy it.
I just don't know what it is. And I played a little bit before the podcast. I played with Squill specifically, and we were just having all kinds of, at least I was, having trouble killing. We had a game where we just went in and it was like 2 of us against 8. No one was able to join the lobby or anything like that. And it speaks to that whole, connecting to people overseas. And, then stuff starts going wrong and not working. And, and Squill said he was lagging really bad too. And what's the answer to that? I don't know. You just expect stuff to work, and you expect it to work, right. Yeah. I don't have problems with other games, but when I play anything Call of Duty, I just, connection issue.
I think you'll probably find that with a lot of bugs and stuff, I mean, there's only so much Activision can do testing-wise before they have to get it on the shelf. So, like with last year and all the Elite stuff with Modern Warfare 3, it was December before everything was really working properly, which was 2 months of constant issues, especially with the famous PS3 issue where, one day you could fire up the single-player campaign, play it on Modern Warfare 3, and the game worked fine. You go into the following day, you go into the multiplayer, but the single-player wouldn't work. And that happened for about a week after it launched. So, I don't know. It's just a question of patience, really. It will work over the coming months. They've just got to get working on the patch.
Yeah. You think they'd have something like that down? They'd have skill in the online multiplayer, as much experience as they've had. But I noticed some other things too. Like there's, they finally gave us a mute all button, and
a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, you still have to do it per each game. Why not make it where it's muting everyone except for the people in my party for every room I go? So they've added it, but then they limited it somewhat too, where you go in there and then someone joins the lobby and you've got to, right in the middle of the game, you've got to go to the screen to mute them now, individually, and it's, it's like it's a step in the right direction, but at the same time, it's like you couldn't just think this out and, make it function and work the way it's intended.
I imagine it's a developer issue because obviously, as someone rightly pointed out to me, Mr. GTA Man earlier, is that if you're on Xbox Live and you're in a party and you mute all, it'll automatically mute everybody by your party if you go into a lobby as a party. Obviously, we don't have that option on PS3 really to do that. So I imagine it's a case of they haven't put too much effort into the feature because it would require a lot of development resources for them to perhaps maybe sort that out for the PS3 version. And obviously when they're trying to develop both versions simultaneously together, I can't imagine that they've put a lot of thought into it. But it's one of those things, they'll see how it goes, look at perhaps maybe adding it to the to-do list for next year, like EA do with FIFA. Quite often with FIFA, there's a lot of issues.
Well, it's easy to say that, Dante, but how many features like that have been, on the to-do list from from day one. How many things like this, did developers and even Sony say we're going to fix this, we're going to in being able to play your own music while you're playing in a game. Things like this that have have long been talked about as features that should already be there. They should just be there. So I don't know. I would like it to where, somebody that has kids that, like I said before, I want them to experience it. I'm not worried about the blood and gore or anything like that, but I certainly don't want all those smack-talking little kids that are going to cuss throughout the entire game. For one, distracting me, and for two, talking to my kids that way if they want to listen to the game sound. My kids they play Black Ops, they play any Call of Duty game with their TV turned all the way down. They're just simply not allowed to listen to the sounds because they have to take in all that other stuff with it. And a mute all button should be a mute all. It should be very simple to imagine how it should work. If I want to mute everyone except for those in my party, it should be in every lobby. It should be in every, I shouldn't have to keep resetting it. It shouldn't be people are going to fall through the cracks when they come in late and have to be muted manually. I literally mute people and I get killed. About 1 in 4 games I'm muting someone and I'm getting killed because of it.
I'll be honest, I don't know if there's someone probably have to correct me if I'm wrong on this, but there may be an option within the audio options under multiplayer to actually turn down the voices. Right. Not the game effects and stuff.
And that's a somewhat of a fix, but then your friends, you can't hear, you can't hear their audio, so, I don't know.
I mean, I think that the problem with it, though, to some respect, is that Activision and developers, both Treyarch and Infinity Ward, have gone down the route of, well, if you're playing anyway, you might as well just report them. And they have made it, specifically clear that they won't, in all intents and purposes, take any shit from players. They are going to ban people, they are going to issue warnings, and if necessary, disable the game if they ruin it for others. Yeah. So I think that they're sort of them relying a lot on sort of gamer discretion more than anything, which is a case of, well, if you don't want that to happen, we haven't got the resources to invest in that, because essentially we've gone down a different route, which is the report things. And to a certain degree, I'm kind of torn between the two, because I get what you're saying about the smack talk thing, and obviously if you've got kids playing, it's not ideal, but at the same time, I'd rather have people reported, banned, and not be able to use the game if some of the language that comes from them, which quite frankly is appalling, if I report them in the knowledge that something's going to happen, I feel much better about that, because
but then you're going back to that whole like, how many people would you report in an average day? I mean, you could be talking about reporting, and I don't have confidence that those people are banned. I'm sure people are with the graphic gamer, the card images when they put up the picture of someone pooping or whatever on. Yeah. But that's probably further down the road. By the time they get to it, they've had that card up for weeks, and I don't know that what's being said. Like, when you hit that, is it recording something? Is it they're going to check on them later, and, well, maybe later they're not cussing and acting like a fool, and so. Yeah,
but here's the thing, KD. Every game, all the videos are pretty much saved. Mm-hmm. You can go, if you go and look in your playlist, you can look at a pick of a majority of games that you've played in, and it does include the audio as well. So, they can test out, that they can double check if people are,
So it does include the audio over mics in this version of videos.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I wasn't aware of that. That's cool.
So, yeah.
I guess that's good or bad. Depends on somebody ruining your video now there, too. You can't put it on YouTube because there's a little kid cussing in the background. Look at my awesome kill streak here, but you don't get to hear the audio because I had to strip that away because...
you can podcast over it. So if,
Yeah.
for example, you do a podcast and you do your own commentary on your own video, it will get rid of all the other audio and just obviously revert back to your Comcast audio. So, but yeah, I'm not 100% sure on that. I have no doubt that if I'm wrong, somebody probably will correct me, and please do if that's the case. But I don't know. It's one of those things where yes, it is annoying having to keep doing it, but they have made it accessible. It's literally two button presses to report somebody. You know what I mean? It's not anything particularly taxing where you have to fill out a form or anything like that, and essentially it's the
Fill a form and mail it to Activision.
yeah, exactly. So
I'll get right on it.
It's down to the prerogative of obviously Treyarch and Sony and obviously Microsoft as well, because essentially the platform holders, Microsoft and Sony, also have to make sure that they're not breaking the rules of PSN as well. So it's in their interest to make sure that for example, if someone is being racially abused over a mic, that it is accessible for people to be reported for that. And Treyarch can then say to Sony, well, look, there's only so much we can do. What can you do? If that means the console's disabled remotely, or they get a lifetime ban on that PSN account, so be it. I'll tell you what, though, a lot of people think twice if they have to go through signing up for another PSN account just to get back on their favourite game, because if you can imagine, you've bought all the DLC for Call of Duty. You get 2 accounts banned. That's all you do. You're not going to get your DLC again. So, they will think twice about it if people do actively report it. But I agree, that perhaps maybe Treyarch or Infinity would need to take player feedback to essentially for the PS3 version more than anything, is that if you are going to mute everybody in a party, that you don't have to do it every game that you join. Maybe put the option in the features where you can mute everybody but your party, and do it that way. But again, as I say, it's a bit like FIFA in that respect, that there will be features missing with every iteration of the game. But don't ever think that they've given up on those. It's just one of those things when you've got a game to make in a year, and essentially you've got 6 months of planning and then 18 months of developing or whatever, and they've got a real quick turnaround time in EA and Activision, so there's only so much they can do, and if they have to leave something out to make sure it gets on the shelf, they will do that. But that can be a blessing and a curse, because if it doesn't come to the next version, you think, well, I've paid for this game, but at the same time, if it makes the next version better, everyone's a winner.
Well, they've made some improvements, but I noticed a lot of things missing too. And you talk about the game types. What happened to Drop Zone? I was a big player of Drop Zone. I love that game. It's not in there.
I hadn't looked, to be honest. I'm a kill.
And I was even a big, back in the day, I played a lot of Hardcore Headquarters and things like that, and I know that wasn't very popular, but at the same time, it's like they had it through various Call of Duty games, and then all of a sudden, they nuke them, and when they change major things like that, you just got to ask, well,
Yeah, but that's based on player feedback, though, so I'm pretty certain.
Well, Drop Zone was a player feedback favorite, and that's why it was added, and it's not there. So, if that's the case,
maybe it needs people to request it again, because
maybe.
I'm pretty certain they can drop that in the playlist the way that Call of Duty games work now, as we saw with all that controversy about Modern Warfare 2 and the map on there, which had a slur on, had an Islamic quote or whatever.
Yeah.
They took that map out of rotation. 4 weeks later, the map was back in there, changed, and that was for a game that's, essentially, 3-4 years old. So,
well, I would just like to see. I would like to see some of the variety that we had before, and not step backwards from. Give us something, and then. Well, it's more than that. The kill streak thing. hardcore, you look at hardcore games, you can have, 10, 12 game types, and then you go to the hardcore, and there's only 4 game types. It's like, you know, okay, hardcore, if it's not as popular, well, what, they can't make a game mode and just make the hits, because I can go into a private room and I can do that. I can set that up. Um, I can go set up a domination game and then just set the settings so that the bullets and everything are for hardcore.
Yeah.
Why not have the hardcore domination, for example, hardcore headquarters in the choices?
So I was going to say,
you know,
maybe on that point, then what we should do is anybody listening to the podcast that wants to see the return of Drop Zone or hardcore headquarters, get tweeting and emailing Activision and Treyarch, and let's hope they put it back in. I tell you, if fans get up and in an uproar about that, I can guarantee you'll see that put back in there again.
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing for me, it was a really great way to rank up. Modern Warfare 3, if you shoot the helicopters, you get a lot of points.
Yeah.
The little birdie helicopters.
Yeah.
So it was a great rank up tool, and I got to find the equivalent, I guess, in Black Ops 2. Maybe somebody can point me to the right direction. Which mode is the fastest rank up?
Kill confirmed easily.
Yeah.
Just because even if you shoot someone, and you pick up their tags, you get like 150 points as opposed to just 100 for the kill. But I mean, even if you can't kill people and you pick up your team's dog tags or kills where people have killed the opposition but haven't got their dog tags, you can pick up the gold ones as well, and you'll get points through the roof. So yeah, kill confirmed is probably the easiest to rank up on.
Yeah.
And it's good fun as well, I think.
I'll play some of that. We'll have to play some of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll have to play together. We haven't. Have we ever played Call of Duty together?
No, but we'll have to change that because
We'll have to
obviously
do
with
that.
game nights and stuff, we need to. I certainly need to be more active with game nights. So yeah.
Cool beans. So what are you saying? Are you saying Black Ops 2 is a shoe-in?
I'll make it happen. My plan. Get Black Ops 2 in the game night playlist.
I'm sure it'll show up. I have a feeling it might show up sooner or later.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see. All right, Dante. Anything to finish us up for our weekly podcast?
No, I think that's pretty much covered. Other than to say, just on a personal note, I finally hit 10,000 trophies. And while I've got the opportunity to do it in a public forum, I would like to thank everybody who's played with me over the years, the 4 years that it's taken me to get that milestone.
Yeah, that's
through
huge.
numerous games, boosting, and all kinds of weird and wonderful things, and just the people that have helped me to get to that stage through, as I say, just doing things like boosting or playing games and grinding games out with me and stuff. So, I just want to say, thank you to all those people. And yeah, 10k. Hopefully it's not going to take me 4 years to get to 20.
Yeah. The way you just seem to be buying games and buying games and buying games, so you'll probably get there a lot faster, right?
Yeah, I've got so much to finish on a backlog.
Yeah, backlog. That's the downside, right?
I was just going to say, just for the record, just so people know, I'm not a millionaire. I do tend to buy a lot of my games second-hand and budget. So good budgeting means you can have a lot of games. Put it that way.
Yeah. Or you do what I do, just sell them all back and use it to buy the next set of games. And, that's had me step past a lot of DLC, but, I'm no longer a completionist. I got weaned out of that.
I never have been, I guess, what you call a completionist, but I do like to try and at least beat all my games at least
platinum.
once. So
yeah. You got to get that value. You got to beat every trophy and get the value. Makes you feel like you've got your money's worth, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, my personal target for next year is 200 platinum, so I'm going to start pummeling that backlog.
Awesome.
Over the next year.
That is a lot. Yeah. Heck, people with 20 and 30, that's a lot. You don't see.
I'm on 136, so.
Yeah, that's. People don't realize. People play a lot of games and don't go for trophies, and even having 10, 20 platinums is, across all gamers, that is a lot to beat that many games 100%. So, to get over 100, that's huge. 136.
Yep.
Wow. Congratulations, man.
Thanks.
What was your 10,000th trophy, by the way? Did you pick something cool to earn there?
I didn't. I figured
random?
there would be
Hannah Montana?
yeah, that would have been fun. No, I just figured that if I tried to ask people, and I got quite a few varied responses, and it was a case of by the time I'd realised where I was with trophies, it was kind of like, well, I'm really going to have to plan out what I play, and I play what I want to play when I want to play it, basically. So having to plan it out would just have killed it for me. I was
You're like, I'm
kind of
not doing it.
Yeah. So, I should probably also say thank you to those people that did make suggestions. But in the end, I sort of took the executive decision, which was, well, if I get it, I get it. Just so happens that my sister was kind enough to lend me her copy of Wonderbook because I really wanted to try that out. I'd seen a lot of it. Yes, I'd seen the, obviously, 20-minute failed demo at E3, but having gone round Eurogamer and seen it on stands and stuff, it was something that I wanted to try, but not in a public area, if you know what I mean. There's nothing worse than a 29-year-old man sitting down to play something that looks like it should be for kids, but everybody can get enjoyment out of it. So once I actually had time to sit down and do it, my sister was kind enough to lend me it, and I actually really enjoyed it, to be honest. I do think people should check that out. There is a lot of potential for that technology. So, but yeah, I think 10k trophy was something like in Wonderbook. I don't know if it was gold or what, but yeah, that's what it was. I'm not too fussed. Getting 10,000 is an achievement in itself, so doesn't matter what the 10,000 trophy is. The point is I got there, and I'm happy for it, and I'm grateful to all the people that have helped me.
Cool. Well, congrats again, dude. All right.
Cheers.
Well, hopefully we'll come up with a really good, poll question this next week, and we look forward to seeing everyone, on the next podcast. Looks like everything went well. We seem to have a good connection this time, so we'll continue with this.
Woohoo!
We'll try it with a guest, and we'll see if we still get the same results.
Yeah.
And but we're still trying. And speaking of trying, we're gonna be moving the server here sooner or later. It's gonna happen. We've had a little bit of a family emergency with the programmer that was kind of the head of that server move, and so we just gotta be a little bit patient. And I apologize to everyone. We'll get that done as soon as we can, and hopefully it won't be on a day where we have everyone wanting to be on. We'll try to do it at a reasonable time and a reasonable day to do that as well. And once we do that, then we'll look forward to what I've talked to Dante about recently is some of the changes and stuff coming is having him do some polls and stuff on that to get a little bit more feedback. People like to give feedback on things that affect them more directly, and certainly things on the site like that. People are very opinionated about what they want to see and what add-ons they would like to have. So we'll be looking forward to Dante also kind of handling that as one of the tasks with the polls and the social media and whatnot. Because I'd like to encourage everyone to be involved in that. We're not mind readers. We don't know what people like. People like a variety of different things. Dante, you have your tastes in games. I have my taste in games.
Yeah.
And certainly that it's that way across everyone on the site. So don't be afraid to give feedback. Give Dante and I feedback on the podcasts. Give him feedback on his all of his posts, his articles. That's what they're there for. They're to elicit discussions. And while a lot of you read them, just like seeing the podcast, we know a lot of people are watching the podcasts. Not so many live, but many people watch them later. Don't be afraid to stop in and put a post up. Put a post up on, YouTube. Put a post up on social media about it. Feel free to give feedback, even if it's something that we can improve. notwithstanding the technical problems, obviously we know about those, and you can't run those into the ground. We're doing what we can. But all the other stuff, we would sure like to hear your feedback. So.
Yeah. I'd rather, if I'm wrong about something or someone has a difference of opinion with me, just tell me what your opinion is. I really do want to hear it. And so I always think having those discussions tend to be the great discussions. That's why we're gamers. You know what I mean?
That doesn't work for me though, because I'm never wrong, and so no. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Dante.
No
Congratulations on your 10,000 trophies.
Woo.
And we will see everyone next week. Until then, thank you for joining us, and have a good day. Bye-bye.